I didn't realize my best friend had been planning my divorce until she handed me the pen. It was a simple pen. Silver, smooth, the kind you'd find in a law office. It didn't look like something that could change your life. But when Claire slid it across the table toward me, her fingers steady, her smile gentle, something inside me shifted. "Just sign here, Emily," she said softly. "It's for your own good." I remember staring at that paper, my name already typed neatly at the bottom, waiting for my signature like it had always been meant to be there. Divorce papers. And my best friend, the woman who had helped me pick out my wedding dress, was sitting across from me, guiding me through the end of my marriage. At that moment, I still didn't understand how everything had unraveled so perfectly for her. But I would. And when I did, I realized something that made my stomach turn. This wasn't something that happened overnight. Claire hadn't just been there for my divorce. She had been building it from the very beginning. Before all of this, my life was simple. Not perfect, but warm in a way that made you feel safe when you came home at night. I had been married to Daniel for 7 years. We met in a quiet coffee shop just outside of Seattle, both of us reaching for the last blueberry muffin behind the glass display. He had laughed, pulling his hand back. "You can have it," he said. "You look like you need it more than I do." I remember rolling my eyes. "Oh really? And what does that mean?" "It means," he smiled. "You look like someone who hasn't had a good morning yet." That was Daniel. Easygoing. Gentle. The kind of man who noticed small things, like whether I took sugar in my coffee, or when I was quiet for too long. We didn't fall in love all at once. It was gradual, like the way the sun warms a room in the morning without you noticing until suddenly, everything feels brighter. And Claire, she was there before Daniel ever was. We met in college. She was sitting alone in the cafeteria, perfectly put together even on a random Tuesday afternoon. Hair neat, nails done, posture straight like she belonged somewhere more important. I almost didn't approach her. She looked like the kind of person who wouldn't need anyone. But when I sat down across from her, she smiled like she had been waiting for me. "I was hoping someone would sit here," she said. And just like that, we became inseparable. Claire had a way of understanding people. She listened more than she spoke, but when she did speak, it felt like she knew exactly what you needed to hear. When I met Daniel, she was the first person I told. "You have to meet him," I said one evening, dragging her along to a small dinner. I still remember the way she looked at him when he walked in. Not obvious. Not dramatic. Just observant. Like she was already trying to understand him. "He's good for you," she told me later that night. And at the time, that meant everything to me. Claire was the one who helped me plan my wedding. She picked out flowers, coordinated with vendors, even kept me calm when I thought everything was falling apart 2 days before the ceremony. "You're overthinking," she said, adjusting the veil on my head. "It's going to be perfect." And it was. The venue was small. A garden behind an old estate, with white chairs lined neatly along a stone path. The air smelled like roses and freshly cut grass. I remember the way the sunlight filtered through the trees, soft and golden, like something out of a dream. Claire stood beside me as my maid of honor, holding my bouquet when my hands were shaking. "Breathe," she whispered. When I walked down the aisle, Daniel looked at me like I was the only person in the world. And for a long time, I believed I was. Our marriage wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady. Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper spread across the table. Late-night conversations about nothing in particular. Small arguments about things that didn't matter. Like whose turn it was to take out the trash. We didn't have children, not because we didn't want them, but because life kept getting in the way. Work, timing, the idea that we had more time than we actually did. Claire was always there. She came over for dinner at least once a week. She knew where everything was in our kitchen, sometimes even more than I did. She would move easily through our home, pouring herself a glass of wine, laughing with Daniel like they had known each other just as long. I never questioned it. Why would I? She was my best friend. Looking back now, I can see the small things I missed. The way Claire would ask Daniel questions. Not just polite conversation, but deeper things. "Are you happy at work?" she asked him once, leaning slightly forward, her voice soft. Daniel hesitated. "It's fine, I guess." Dash, you don't sound convinced. I remember laughing it off. He's always like that. He overthinks everything. But Claire didn't laugh. She just watched him. Carefully. Then there were the times she spoke to me alone. You've changed, Emily, she said one night while we were washing dishes together. I frowned. What do you mean? Dash, you used to be more alive. I laughed, shaking my head. I'm married, Claire. Not dead. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm just saying, sometimes people settle without realizing it. That word, settle, lingered in my mind longer than I wanted to admit. At first, I pushed it away. But Claire had a way of planting thoughts so gently that you didn't notice them growing. The first real crack didn't come from Daniel. It came from me. Or at least, that's what I believed at the time. It was a quiet evening. Rain tapping softly against the windows, the kind of sound that usually made the house feel cozy. Daniel was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I was in the kitchen, staring at the sink, feeling something I couldn't quite name. Do you ever feel like we're stuck? I asked suddenly. He looked up, confused. Stuck. Dash, like we're just going through the motions. There was a pause. Then he shrugged slightly. I don't know. I thought we were okay. Okay. Not happy. Not excited. Just okay. And somehow, that felt worse. I told Claire about it the next day. She listened quietly, nodding as I spoke. See, she said gently. That's exactly what I was worried about. Dash, worried about what? That you're losing yourself. I frowned. It's just a phase. Every marriage goes through this. Claire tilted her head, studying me. Maybe, she said slowly. Or maybe you're ignoring something bigger. That was the beginning. Not of the end of my marriage, but of something far more dangerous. Because from that moment on, I started looking at my life differently, through her eyes. And I didn't realize that every question she asked, every doubt she planted, was shaping a story that wasn't entirely mine. If I had known then what I know now, I would have paid closer attention to the way she smiled, to the way she listened, to the way she always seemed to know exactly what to say. Because Claire wasn't just helping me understand my marriage. She was quietly rewriting it. And I was letting her. The night everything truly began to fall apart, Claire was sitting right between us, smiling, watching, waiting. The night everything started to unravel didn't feel like a disaster. It felt ordinary. That's what makes it harder to remember now. Because there was no shouting, no broken glass, no dramatic moment where everything shattered at once. Just a quiet dinner, 3 people sitting at a table, and something invisible slowly shifting between us. Claire had come over, like she always did on Fridays. I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of pasta sauce, the smell of garlic and tomatoes filling the air. The window above the sink was slightly open, letting in the cool evening breeze. It should have felt comforting. Instead, I remember feeling tense. I couldn't explain it. Do you need help? Claire asked, stepping into the kitchen behind me. She was already tying her hair back, like she belonged there. I've got it, I said, forcing a smile. You can relax. She leaned against the counter anyway, watching me. You look tired, she said softly. I shrugged. Work's been busy. Dash, that's not what I meant. I didn't respond, because a small part of me knew exactly what she meant. At the table, Daniel was quieter than usual. He picked at his food, glancing at his phone more than once. I noticed, but I tried not to make it a thing. I had learned over the years that not every silence needed to be filled. Claire noticed too. You're distracted, she said casually, swirling her wine. Daniel looked up, slightly startled. Am I? Dash a little, she smiled. Big project at work? He hesitated. Something like that. I felt that small tightening in my chest again. Daniel's always like this when he's stressed, I said quickly. He just needs a few days. Claire nodded slowly, but her eyes didn't leave him. You should talk about it, she said. Keeping things in it builds distance. Distance. There was that word again. Later that night, after dinner, Claire suggested we sit outside. The air was cool, the sky dark except for a few scattered stars. The porch light cast a soft yellow glow around us, just enough to see each other's faces. We sat in silence for a while. Then Claire spoke. Can I ask you both something? She said, her voice calm. Daniel glanced at me, then back at her. Sure. Are you happy? The question hung in the air, heavier than it should have been. I laughed lightly. Where is this coming from? I'm serious, she said. You've been married for years now. It's easy to just exist together without really asking that question. Daniel leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. I think we're fine, he said. Fine. That word again. Claire looked at me. And you, Emily? I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out immediately. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure. I think so, I said finally. But even as I said it, I could feel the hesitation in my own voice. Claire didn't push. She just nodded. But something had already been set in motion. After she left that night, the house felt different. Too quiet. Daniel was in the living room, flipping through channels without really watching anything. I stood in the hallway for a moment, watching him. There was nothing wrong. Nothing obvious. And yet, are you happy? I asked suddenly. He looked up, surprised. What? With us, I said. Are you happy? He frowned slightly. Where is this coming from? I hesitated. Claire asked earlier. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Emily, we're good. Why are we overanalyzing this? I'm not overanalyzing, I said, a little sharper than I intended. I'm asking a simple question. And I'm giving you a simple answer, he replied. We're fine. Fine. That word felt heavier now. More final. The next few weeks were subtle. But they weren't the same. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way Daniel seemed distracted more often. The way he didn't ask me about my day like he used to. The way our conversations became shorter, more practical. Did you pay the bill? What time is your meeting? Can you pick up groceries? We still lived together. But something softer between us had begun to fade. And Claire, she was always there to listen. You're not imagining it, she told me one afternoon as we sat in a small cafe, the hum of quiet conversations around us. I had just finished telling her how distant things felt at home. He's changed, I said. Or maybe I have. I don't know. Claire reached across the table, placing her hand gently over mine. You're growing, she said. And sometimes people don't grow together. I swallowed, my throat tightening. Are you saying we're drifting apart? I'm saying, she replied carefully. You deserve to feel seen, heard, loved. Her words settled deep inside me, because they were everything I hadn't realized I was missing. After that, I started paying attention to everything. Every silence felt longer. Every missed detail felt intentional. And the more I noticed, the more distant Daniel seemed. One night, I found him sitting alone in the dark living room. The TV was off. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Why didn't you turn on the lights? I asked, stepping inside. He shrugged. Didn't feel like it. I stood there for a moment. You've been distant, I said quietly. He exhaled slowly. I've just been tired. It's more than that. He looked at me then, something tired in his eyes. Emily, not everything has to be a problem. I'm not saying it's a problem, I replied. I feel like you're not here anymore. I'm right here, he said, his voice tightening slightly. But it didn't feel that way. And for the first time, I didn't believe him. That night, I didn't sleep well. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Claire's words echoing in my mind. You deserve to feel loved. Was I? Had I been settling without realizing it? The next day, Claire came over again. She always seemed to know when something was wrong. You look like you didn't sleep, she said, setting her bag down. I gave a small, tired laugh. Is it that obvious? She nodded. Talk to me. And I did. I told her everything. The distance, the silence, the feeling that something between Daniel and me had shifted in a way I couldn't fix. Claire listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. Then she said something that would stay with me long after that moment. Sometimes, she said gently, love isn't enough to keep two people together. I felt something in my chest tighten. What are you saying? I'm saying, She paused, choosing her words carefully. Maybe you're holding on to something that's already slipping away. I didn't want to believe her, but a small part of me already did. What I didn't realize was that while I was questioning my marriage, Claire wasn't just listening. She was guiding. Every doubt I had, she gave it shape. Every insecurity, she gave it a voice. And every time I turned to her for clarity, I was drifting further away from Daniel and closer to something I didn't understand yet. Because while I was starting to feel alone in my marriage, Claire was making sure I never felt alone. She was always there, always supportive, always understanding, too understanding, and I didn't see it then. But she wasn't just stepping into the space between me and my husband. She was slowly taking it. The moment I should have realized something was wrong was the moment she said it so calmly, like it was just another thought. You know, Claire said one evening, her voice light, if you ever needed to leave, you wouldn't have to do it alone. I looked at her, confused. Leave. She held my gaze, her expression steady. Yes, she said softly. Leave. At the time, I thought she was just being supportive. Now I know. That was the moment she stopped being my friend and started becoming something else. The first time I wondered if Claire knew more than she was telling me, it was because of something small. So small that, at the time, I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Quiet. Ordinary. The kind of day that doesn't leave a mark unless something changes. I had left work early. A headache, I told my manager. But the truth was I just needed space. From the noise, from the constant feeling that something in my life was shifting in a way I couldn't control. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Daniel's car wasn't there. That wasn't unusual. But the front door was unlocked. I paused, my hand resting on the handle. I always locked that door. Always. The house was silent when I stepped inside. Too silent. There was a faint scent in the air, something sweet, unfamiliar. Not the usual smell of coffee or laundry detergent. Something softer, like perfume. I stood there for a moment, listening. Nothing. I walked slowly through the living room, my eyes scanning the space. Everything looked normal. Except for one thing. A glass on the coffee table. Half full of water. Daniel never left glasses out like that. Neither did I. Hello? I called out. No answer. I checked the kitchen. Empty. The bedroom. Empty. But something felt off. Like I had just missed someone. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe Daniel had come home for lunch. Maybe he left the door unlocked by mistake. Maybe the scent I noticed was just something from outside. Maybe. But that night, when Claire came over, I mentioned it casually. I think someone was in the house today, I said, trying to sound light. Claire didn't laugh. What do you mean? She asked. The door was unlocked, I said. And there was this smell. Like perfume. I glanced at Daniel, expecting him to react. He didn't. He just shrugged. Maybe you forgot to lock it, he said. I don't forget things like that. Well, maybe this time you did. His tone wasn't harsh, but it wasn't comforting either. Claire watched us quietly. Then she leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs. Have you ever thought, she said slowly, that maybe there are things you don't know? The room went still. I frowned. What does that mean? She tilted her head slightly, her expression thoughtful. I'm just saying, sometimes people have parts of their lives they don't share. I felt a flicker of unease. Daniel wouldn't. I didn't say he would, she interrupted gently. I'm just asking you to consider that you might not see everything. That night I couldn't sleep. Again. I lay beside Daniel, listening to his breathing, steady and even, like nothing had changed. But something had. Because now, there was a question in my mind. And once a question is there, it doesn't leave. The next few days, I found myself paying closer attention. Too close. I noticed when Daniel smiled at his phone, when he stepped outside to take calls, when he seemed distracted in conversations. Each small thing, by itself, meant nothing. But together, they started to feel like something. Have you checked his phone? Claire asked one afternoon. We were sitting in her car, parked outside a grocery store, neither of us making any move to go inside. No, I said quickly. I'm not that kind of person. Claire nodded slowly. Of course you're not, she said. You trust him. Ido. But even as I said it, my voice felt less certain. She was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again, softer this time. But trust doesn't mean you ignore your instincts. I hated how much that made sense. That night, I stood in the bedroom, staring at Daniel's phone on the nightstand. He was in the shower. I could hear the water running, steady and distant. I had never done this before. Never felt the need to. But now, my hand moved before I could stop it. I picked up his phone. It was locked. Of course it was. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding and set it back down. What was I doing? This wasn't me. When he came out of the bathroom, I was already in bed, pretending to scroll through my own phone. He looked at me for a moment. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said quickly. Just tired. He nodded, turning off the light. But I could feel his eyes on me for a second longer than usual, like he knew something had shifted. The next morning, I met Claire for coffee. I didn't plan to tell her what I almost did. But somehow, I did. I almost checked his phone, I admitted, staring down at my cup. Claire didn't look surprised. She just stirred her coffee slowly. And, she asked. I didn't. She nodded. Because you're afraid of what you might find. I'm not afraid, I said quickly. But she raised an eyebrow, and I stopped. Because she was right. I was. Emily, she said gently. You're not crazy for noticing changes. And you're not wrong for wanting the truth. I swallowed. But what if there's nothing? Then you'll have peace, she replied. And if there is something? She met my eyes, her expression calm. Then you deserve to know. That word again. Deserve. She used it often. And every time she did, it made me feel like I was missing something. Something important. A few days later, something happened that I couldn't explain away. Daniel came home late. Later than usual. I was sitting in the living room, the TV on but muted, waiting. Where were you? I asked when he walked in. Work, he said, loosening his tie. That late? Yeah. We had to finish something. I nodded slowly. But as he walked past me, I smelled it. That same scent. Soft. Sweet. Perfume. My heart started to pound. Daniel. I said, my voice quieter now. He stopped. What? I stood up, walking toward him slowly. What is that smell? He frowned slightly. What smell? That, I said. It's not mine. He hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. It's probably from the office, he said. People wear perfume, Emily. I stared at him, trying to read his face. But he looked normal, calm, unbothered. Still something didn't feel right. That night I called Claire. I think something's going on, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then she spoke. I was afraid of that. And in that moment, instead of feeling comforted, I felt something else. Something colder. Because she didn't sound surprised. She sounded certain. Emily, she said gently. You need to prepare yourself. For what? For the truth. I closed my eyes, my hand tightening around the phone. I don't even know what that is yet. You will, she said quietly. Looking back now, that was the moment everything crossed a line. Because instead of bringing me closer to clarity, Claire was pulling me deeper into doubt. And I didn't realize that every step I took toward the truth was a step further away from my own judgment. I trusted her. Completely. I believed she was the one person who would never hurt me. The one person who was on my side. But I didn't know. She was already shaping what I would see, what I would believe, and eventually, what I would lose. The truth was closer than I thought. But it wasn't what Claire wanted me to find. And when I finally did, I would realize the biggest betrayal in my life wasn't coming from my husband. The truth didn't come all at once. It never does. It arrives in fragments, in moments that don't quite fit together until suddenly, they do. And by then, it's already too late to pretend you didn't see it. For me, it started with a message. Not one I found, One that was shown to me. Claire invited me over that Saturday afternoon. Just us, she said. You need a break. I didn't argue. By then, I had started to feel like my own home wasn't entirely mine anymore. Like I was walking through it carefully, watching, listening, searching for something I couldn't quite name. Claire's apartment, on the other hand, was always calm, controlled. Everything in its place. It felt safe. Or at least, I thought it did. She handed me a glass of wine as soon as I walked in. You look exhausted, she said. I am, I admitted, sinking into the couch. She sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. Have you talked to him? She asked. Not really, I said. Every time I try, it turns into nothing. What do you mean? He just shuts it down. Says everything's fine. Claire exhaled softly. That's what people do when they don't want to be caught. The word caught landed heavily between us. I don't even know what I'm looking for, I said. You're looking for honesty, she replied. She reached for her phone. Can I show you something? I frowned. What? It's just something I noticed, she said carefully. There was something in her tone that made my stomach tighten. She unlocked her phone, scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward me. Look at this. It was a screenshot. A message. From Daniel's name. My heart skipped. What is this? I whispered. Claire's voice was soft, almost hesitant. I didn't want to tell you, but I thought you deserved to see it. The message was simple. I can't talk right now. She's home. I felt my chest tighten. I said, my voice barely there. Claire didn't answer immediately. I don't know who he was talking to, she said slowly. But it didn't feel right. I stared at the screen, my mind trying to catch up. This could be anything. I said, though my voice lacked conviction. It could, Claire agreed. But combined with everything else. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Where did you get this? I asked. Claire hesitated. I saw his phone when he was here the other day, she said. He left it on the table. I blinked. When he was here? Yeah, she said quickly. He stopped by to drop something off. You didn't know? I shook my head slowly. No, a strange feeling settled in my chest. Something wasn't adding up. But the message. That message was louder than everything else. I didn't want to tell you, Claire said gently, placing her hand over mine. But I couldn't just pretend I didn't see it. I nodded slowly, my eyes still on the screen. My thoughts were racing, but none of them felt clear. Just fragments. Questions. Doubt. That night, I couldn't look at Daniel the same way. Every word he said felt like it had something hidden behind it. Every glance, every silence. I was searching for meaning. Did you go anywhere yesterday? I asked casually over dinner. He looked up, confused. Yesterday. Yeah. Just work, he said. Why? I shook my head. Just asking. But inside, something twisted. Because Claire had said he went to her place. And he hadn't mentioned it. Are you sure? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? Nothing, I said quickly. Forget it. He studied me for a moment longer than usual, then nodded, going back to his food. I didn't push. But I didn't forget. Later that night, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. Daniel, I said quietly. Yeah. Is there anything you want to tell me? There was a pause. Then he sighed. Emily, what is this about? I just feel like something's off, I said. Between us. He rubbed his face, clearly tired. We've been over this. No, I said softly. We haven't. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. And for a moment, I saw something in his eyes. Not guilt. Not fear. Just frustration. I don't know what you want me to say, he said. I want you to be honest. I am being honest. Then why does it feel like you're not here anymore? He exhaled sharply, standing up. I can't keep doing this, he said. Every conversation turns into an interrogation. I'm not interrogating you. I said, my voice trembling. I'm trying to understand. Understand what? He snapped. There's nothing to understand. The room went silent. The tension hung thick between us. I think we need space, he said finally, his voice quieter now. The words hit me harder than I expected. Space. I repeated. Yeah, he said, running a hand through his hair. Just time to breathe. Think. I stared at him. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Are you saying you want to leave? I asked. He hesitated. Then he nodded. Just for a while. Something inside me cracked. The next morning, I packed a bag. Not because I wanted to leave, but because I didn't know how to stay. Claire was the first person I called. Of course she was. I knew this was coming, she said softly when I told her. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my eyes burning. I don't understand how it got here, I whispered. Claire's voice was calm. You didn't cause this, Emily. Then who did? There was a pause. Then she said something that would stay with me for a long time. Sometimes, people just aren't who we think they are. I closed my eyes. And I believed her. She told me to come over. Stay with me for a few days, she said. You shouldn't be alone right now. And I went. Of course I did. Her apartment felt different that night. Warmer. Quieter. Like a place where I could finally breathe. You're going to be okay, she said, sitting beside me. I nodded, though I didn't feel okay. Not even close. Whatever happens, she continued, her voice steady. I'm here for you. And I believed that too. Because I still thought she was on my side. What I didn't realize was that everything that had just happened, the argument, the distance, the doubt, even the message she showed me, none of it was as simple as it seemed. And the closer I got to the truth, the more I would realize I wasn't just losing my marriage. I was losing something else. Something I had trusted even more. Because while I was falling apart, Claire was exactly where she wanted to be. Right beside me. Living at Claire's apartment felt strange in a way I couldn't fully explain. Not uncomfortable. Not exactly. But unfamiliar. Like staying in a hotel room that looked perfect but didn't quite feel like yours. The first morning I woke up there, sunlight was already spilling through the large windows in her living room. I could hear soft music playing somewhere in the apartment. The kind of quiet piano melodies Claire always liked. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered. Daniel. The argument. The word space. My chest tightened again. Claire was already awake when I stepped into the kitchen. She stood at the counter in a silk robe, calmly slicing strawberries like it was any other morning. Good morning, she said gently when she noticed me. I forced a small smile. Morning. She placed a bowl in front of me. You need to eat. I'm not really hungry. Eat anyway, she said softly. Something about the way she said it felt oddly practiced. Like she had already imagined this moment before it happened. We sat at the small kitchen table, the clinking of forks against bowls the only sound between us. After a moment, Claire spoke. Did he text you? I shook my head. No, she nodded slowly. That tells you something. I looked up. What do you mean? If he cared enough to fix things, she said carefully, he would have reached out by now. Her words landed heavily, but something about them felt too certain. He's probably just giving us both time, I said quietly. Claire tilted her head. Or maybe he's relieved. I frowned slightly. That's a harsh assumption. I'm just being realistic, she replied calmly. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. My heart jumped when I saw Daniel's name. Can we talk? The message was simple, but it felt like oxygen after being underwater. I stood up immediately. I'm going to see him, I told Claire. She looked up from the couch, her expression unreadable. Right now? Yes. There was a brief pause. Then she smiled gently. Of course. But something in her voice felt tight. The drive back to our house felt longer than usual. The neighborhood looked exactly the same. Quiet streets, trimmed lawns, the same maple tree in our yard that Daniel had insisted on planting 3 years earlier. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a place where something had broken. Daniel opened the door before I even knocked. He looked tired. His shirt wrinkled, his hair slightly messy like he had been running his hands through it all day. Hey, he said quietly. Hey. For a moment, Neither of us moved. Then he stepped aside so I could come in. The house smelled faintly of coffee and something else, something burnt. Daniel had never been great at cooking. I almost smiled at the thought. Almost. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The same table where Claire had shared dinner with us so many times. Emily, he began, his voice careful. I'm sorry about the other night. I nodded slowly. Me too. There was a silence between us. Not hostile, just heavy. I think we've both been under a lot of pressure, he continued. Yeah. And maybe we've been listening to too many outside voices. That made me pause. What do you mean? He hesitated, like he was choosing his words carefully. Sometimes, when other people get involved in a marriage, things get complicated. My stomach tightened slightly. Are you talking about Claire? He looked at me. Emily, have you noticed how much she's been around lately? I frowned. She's my best friend. I know, he said quickly. I'm not saying she's a bad person. But, he sighed. But sometimes it feels like she's influencing things. The words made me defensive immediately. She's just trying to help. I get that, he replied calmly. But some of the things you've said to me lately, they sound like her. I stared at him. What is that supposed to mean? I'm just saying, maybe we should focus on us for a while. I felt irritation rise in my chest. So now this is her fault? That's not what I said. But it's what you're implying. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. This is exactly what I mean, he muttered. What does that mean? It means every conversation turns into a fight. The room felt smaller suddenly. The walls closer. You told her I came to her apartment the other day, I said suddenly. He blinked. What? She said you stopped by. His confusion looked genuine. I didn't. My heart skipped. What do you mean you didn't? I didn't go to Claire's apartment. The words hung in the air. For a moment, everything felt very still. But she showed me a message. I said slowly. A message? From your phone. Daniel frowned deeply. I never texted Claire. A cold feeling spread through my chest. That doesn't make sense. I'm telling you the truth. I wanted to believe him. But Claire had shown me proof. Hadn't she? You said you smelled perfume, he added quietly. I nodded. It was probably from the elevator at work, he said. Someone spilled something the other day. The whole place smelled like it. The explanation sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. Emily, he said gently, leaning forward. I think someone is making things look worse than they are. My throat tightened. Why would Claire do that? He hesitated. I don't know. And that was the problem. I didn't know either. But suddenly, I realized something that made my stomach drop. Claire had been the one telling me what everything meant. The perfume. The message. The distance. Every single clue. And now Daniel was telling me. Those clues might not mean what I thought they did. I stood up slowly. I need to go, I said. Emily. I just need to think. The drive back to Claire's apartment felt different this time. Quieter. Heavier. Because for the first time, a new question had entered my mind. What if Daniel wasn't the one lying? When I walked inside, Claire looked up from the couch. How did it go? She asked. I hesitated. Then I said the one thing that made her expression change. Just slightly. Daniel says he never texted you. For a brief moment, her smile disappeared. Then it came back. Controlled. That's interesting, she said softly. But the way she said it made something deep inside me begin to shift. Because for the first time since all of this began, I noticed something I hadn't before. Claire wasn't surprised. She looked prepared. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who I should believe anymore. Claire's apartment had always felt warm to me. But that night it felt different. Not colder exactly. Just quieter. Like the air itself was waiting for something. She sat across from me on the couch, her legs tucked neatly beneath her, a mug of tea resting between her hands. So, she said calmly, Daniel says he never texted me. I nodded slowly. That's what he told me. Claire didn't react immediately. She took a small sip of her tea first, her eyes lowered to the cup. Then she sighed. That's disappointing, she said softly. Disappointing? Yes, she replied. I hoped he would at least be honest with you. Her words were smooth. Too smooth. And for the first time since all of this began, I listened to them carefully. Why would he lie about that? I asked. Claire shrugged lightly. People lie when they're caught. But he said he never came here either. She looked up at me then, her eyes steady. Emily, do you really think I would make something like that up? The question felt like a trap. Because of course I didn't want to believe that. You're my best friend, I said quietly. Exactly, she replied. The conversation should have ended there. Normally it would have. But something inside me had shifted during my talk with Daniel. Something small, but persistent. Doubt. Not about my marriage this time. About something else. What day did he come here? I asked. Claire blinked. Last Thursday, she said after a moment. Thursday? I repeated slowly. That was the day I came home early from work. The day the door had been unlocked. The day I smelled perfume in the house. You said he came to drop something off. I continued. She nodded. Yes. What was it? Claire hesitated. Just briefly. A book, she said. What book? The one I lent you months ago. That answer should have satisfied me. But instead it made something tighten in my chest. Because the book she mentioned was still sitting on the shelf in my living room. I had seen it that morning. Oh, I said quietly. Claire studied my face. You look tired, she said gently. You've been under a lot of stress. Yeah, I murmured. Maybe that was it. Maybe I was just exhausted. That night, after Claire went to bed, I stayed up on the couch. The apartment was dark except for the soft glow of a lamp in the corner. I stared at my phone. At Daniel's last message. Can we talk? We had talked. But now, there were more questions. I opened my messages with Claire. Scrolling. Looking. Not entirely sure what I was searching for. Then I saw it. A message she had sent me 3 weeks earlier. Daniel stopped by today. He asked about you. I stared at the screen. 3 weeks earlier. But Daniel had told me he hadn't seen Claire in months. My heart began to beat faster. Was he lying then? Or was she lying now? The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. The kind that comes after a restless night when your mind finally pieces something together. Not the whole picture, but enough to make you uncomfortable. Claire was in the kitchen again when I came out. You're up early, she said with a smile. I didn't sleep much. She frowned sympathetically. That's normal after everything that's happened. I nodded, but my thoughts were somewhere else. Claire, I said slowly. Do you remember the first time you thought something was wrong between me and Daniel? She leaned against the counter thinking. Probably a few months ago. What made you notice? She shrugged. Little things. The way he spoke to you sometimes. The distance. I watched her carefully. You were the one who pointed it out first, I said. Her smile was small. Sometimes people on the outside see things more clearly. That sentence echoed in my mind. People on the outside. But Claire hadn't really been on the outside. She had been inside our lives. Our home. Our conversations. Our arguments. Suddenly, another memory surfaced. One I hadn't thought about in months. It was from last winter. Daniel and I were laughing in the kitchen while cooking dinner. Claire had been sitting at the table watching us. You two are disgustingly happy, she had joked. I had laughed. Is that a bad thing? She had smiled then. But there had been something strange in her eyes. Something I couldn't name at the time. Now sitting in her kitchen again, that memory felt different. Heavier. Why are you asking all these questions? Claire said suddenly. I blinked. What? You've been quiet this morning. I forced a smile. Just thinking. She studied me for a moment longer than usual. Then she changed the subject. You should talk to a lawyer, she said casually. The word startled me. A lawyer? Yes, she said. Just in case things with Daniel turn into something more permanent. Permanent. Divorce. It feels early for that, I said carefully. Claire shook her head. It's better to be prepared. She reached for her phone. I actually know someone. Of course she did. His name is Mark, she continued. Very professional. Very discreet. Ist daher. You've already thought about this? I've been worried about you, she said softly. I wanted to make sure you had options. Her concern sounded genuine, but something about the timing, the readiness, made my stomach twist. Maybe, I said slowly, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet. Claire smiled reassuringly. You don't have to decide anything today. Then she added quietly, but sometimes the sooner you accept the truth, the easier it is to move forward. The truth. That word again. I nodded, but inside another thought had begun to form. A small one. Dangerous. What if the truth wasn't what Claire had been telling me? Because when I thought about everything that had happened, every doubt, every suspicion, every new problem in my marriage, Claire had been there for all of it, not just witnessing it, guiding it. And suddenly, a question appeared in my mind that I couldn't ignore anymore. What if my best friend hadn't just helped me through my divorce? What if she had been quietly creating it? Once the idea entered my mind, I couldn't ignore it. It sat there quietly, like a shadow in the corner of the room. Not loud, not obvious, but impossible to unsee. What if Claire had been shaping everything? The thought felt almost disloyal. Ridiculous, even. Claire had been my best friend for nearly 15 years. She had stood beside me at my wedding. She had held my hand through heartbreaks, career failures, family arguments. People like that didn't betray you. At least, that's what I had always believed. But belief is a fragile thing when doubt begins to grow. The next few days, I started paying attention in a way I never had before. Not just to Daniel, to Claire. Her words, her reactions, the timing of things. And the more I watched, the more something felt wrong. One evening, while Claire was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I wasn't trying to snoop. At least that's what I told myself. But when the screen lit up, my eyes moved there automatically. It was a notification. From someone named Mark. The same lawyer she had mentioned earlier. The message preview read, "Did she sign yet?" My heart skipped. Sign what? I stared at the phone for a long moment, my pulse suddenly loud in my ears. Maybe it meant something else. Maybe they were talking about something unrelated. But a cold feeling crept into my chest anyway. Claire stepped out of the bathroom a few minutes later, her hair damp, wrapped in a towel. You okay? She asked when she noticed my expression. Yeah, I said quickly. But my voice didn't sound convincing, even to me. That night, I barely slept again. The question kept circling in my mind. Did she sign yet? Sign what? Divorce papers? Something else? And why would Claire be discussing that with a lawyer before I had even made a decision? The next morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done since this whole mess began. I called Daniel. He answered on the third ring. Emily. His voice sounded cautious. Hey, I said. There was a brief pause. Everything okay? I think we need to talk again. About what? I hesitated. About Claire. The silence on the other end lasted longer this time. Then he said something that made my stomach twist. I was hoping you'd say that. We met at a small park halfway between our house and Claire's apartment. It was quiet there, just the rustling of leaves and the occasional distant sound of a dog barking. Daniel was already sitting on a bench when I arrived. He stood when he saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It felt strange standing there. Like we were two people who had once known each other perfectly but were now trying to remember how. Thank you for coming, he said. I nodded. I've been thinking a lot. Me too. We sat down, leaving a small space between us. The air felt cool, carrying the faint scent of autumn. I want to ask you something, I said carefully. Okay. Be honest with me. I will. Have you ever had feelings for Claire? His head turned toward me immediately. What? I need to know. His expression was pure confusion. Emily, no. Of course not. Not even once? No, his answer came too quickly to feel rehearsed. Too naturally. Then why did you say she's been influencing things? I asked. Daniel sighed. Because I've noticed it for a while. Dash noticed what? The way she talks to you about us. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? Dash, she asks questions that make you doubt things, he said. Then she presents those doubts back to you like they were always there. His words made my chest tighten, because they sounded familiar. You've been different since she started coming over more often, he continued. More suspicious. More unhappy. Dash, that's not fair, I said quietly. I'm not blaming you, he replied gently. I'm saying I think she's been pushing certain ideas. I thought about the message she had shown me. I can't talk right now. She's home. Did you ever send a message like that? I asked. No. Not to anyone? No, I studied his face carefully. He looked tired. But he didn't look like someone lying. There's something else, he said after a moment. What? I didn't want to tell you before. Because I didn't want to create more problems. Dash, what is it? He hesitated. Then he said quietly, Dash, Claire used to text me. My stomach dropped. What? Not often, he added quickly. Just small things. Dash, what kind of things? Dash, at first it was harmless, he said. Questions about you. About how you were doing. Dash, that doesn't sound strange. Dash, no, he agreed. But eventually it changed. My heart began to pound. How? He looked down at his hands. Sometimes she would say things about your relationship. Dash, like what? Like you deserved better, he said quietly. Like you seemed unhappy. Those were the exact words she had been saying to me. I thought she was just concerned, Daniel continued. But it started to feel uncomfortable. Dash, did you tell her to stop? Dash, yes. And she apologized, he said. And said she just cared about you. The pieces in my mind began to shift. Not fitting yet, but moving. Why didn't you tell me about this? I asked. Because I didn't want you to think badly of her, he replied. That answer hurt more than I expected. Because it meant he had been protecting my friendship. Even while things between us were falling apart. Emily, he said gently. I don't think Claire wants us to work things out. The sentence hung in the air between us. A month ago, I would have defended her immediately. But now, I wasn't so sure. Why would she do that? I whispered. Daniel shook his head. I don't know. But suddenly, I had a terrible feeling that I was getting closer to the answer. Because when I thought about the message I saw on her phone the night before, did she sign yet? It didn't sound like someone concerned about my happiness. It sounded like someone waiting for something to happen. And for the first time, I realized something that made my chest feel tight. Claire hadn't just been helping me through my marriage problems. She had been anticipating my divorce. Almost like she had been expecting it. Or worse, planning it. That thought sat in my chest like a stone. Planning it. I hated even thinking it. Claire had been my best friend for almost 10 years. She had held my hand through job losses, breakups, family fights, everything. The idea that she could somehow be involved in the slow collapse of my marriage felt impossible. And yet, I couldn't ignore the way the pieces were starting to line up. I looked at Daniel again. Did she ever say anything about you? He frowned slightly. What do you mean? Dash, anything personal. About you specifically. He hesitated. That hesitation made my stomach twist. Daniel. He exhaled slowly. Once, he admitted. My heart sank. What did she say? He rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. She asked if you and I were still sleeping in the same room. The words felt like a slap. She asked you that. Dash, yes. And what did you say? Dash. I told her that wasn't her business. For a moment neither of us spoke. My mind was racing now. Flipping through memories like pages in a book, I suddenly realized I had been reading wrong. All the nights Claire had told me I deserved more. All the times she had pointed out Daniel's flaws. All the times she had said, if you're unhappy, you don't have to stay. At the time, it had sounded like support. Now it sounded like encouragement. Encouragement to leave. Emily, Daniel said quietly. I should have told you earlier. I shook my head slowly. No. I think I wouldn't have believed you. That was the truth. If he had said this a month ago, I would have defended Claire without hesitation. I would have told him he misunderstood her. I would have told him he was imagining things. But now I had seen the message on her phone. Did she sign yet? Who had she been talking to? And why did it sound like she was waiting for my divorce papers to be finalized? A chill moved through me. Daniel, I said carefully, have you ever met any of Claire's friends from work? Not really, he said. Just in passing. Does she ever talk about someone named Mark? He thought for a moment. No, I don't think so. That name had been at the top of the message thread. Mark. Whoever he was, he seemed to know about my divorce before I had even made a final decision. And that bothered me more than anything else. Because I hadn't even told Claire I was considering signing the papers yet. Which meant she had assumed. Or, she had been expecting it. My chest tightened again. I think we need to talk to her, Daniel said. The suggestion made my heart race. Tonight? I don't think we should wait, he replied. Part of me wanted to run from that conversation, but another part of me needed answers. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized something terrifying. Claire had been the one encouraging me to talk to the divorce lawyer. Claire had been the one reminding me about the paperwork. Claire had been the one telling me I deserved a fresh start. At the time, I thought she was helping me. Now, I wasn't sure anymore. And for the first time since Daniel and I started talking that night, a new fear crept into my mind. What if we're wrong? I whispered. Daniel looked at me gently. Then we'll apologize. But what if we're not? He didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Then we need to find out why your best friend wants your marriage to end. I stared down at my hands. The room felt suddenly smaller, because deep down, beneath the confusion and disbelief, there was a feeling I couldn't ignore anymore. A feeling that had been growing stronger since the moment I saw that message on Claire's phone. Something about this wasn't just gossip. It wasn't just interference. It was something bigger, something deliberate. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something that made my stomach turn. Claire hadn't just been watching my marriage fall apart. She had been standing right beside me, whispering directions the entire time. The drive to Claire's apartment felt longer than it actually was. Daniel kept both hands on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road, but I could tell his mind was somewhere else entirely. Mine was too. Every streetlight we passed felt like a countdown. I kept replaying memories in my head, moments with Claire that suddenly felt different now. The night she insisted I meet with a divorce lawyer, just to understand my options. The time she told me Daniel's long work hours were a classic red flag. The way she would sometimes ask strange, specific questions about our arguments. At the time, it felt like she was helping me process things. Now it felt like she had been collecting information. Emily, Daniel said softly as we turned onto Claire's street. If this turns into a fight, we should leave. I know. I don't want you getting hurt by this. I gave a small, humorless laugh. I think that part might already be happening. He didn't argue. We parked outside Claire's building a few minutes later. Her living room lights were on. She was home. My heart started beating faster. Daniel turned off the engine but didn't move right away. Are you sure you want to do this tonight? He asked. I stared up at her apartment window. If I left now, I knew I'd spend the entire night wondering what she was hiding, wondering what that message meant. No, I said quietly. But I need to. We walked up the stairs together. Each step felt heavier than the last. When we reached her door, my hand hovered over the doorbell for a moment. 10 years of friendship, 10 years of trust. And suddenly, I wasn't sure how much of it had been real. I pressed the bell. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps. The door opened. Claire stood there, wearing sweatpants and one of her oversized sweaters, her hair pulled into a loose bun. For a split second, she just looked surprised. Then she smiled. Emily. I wasn't expecting. Her sentence stopped when she saw Daniel standing beside me. The smile faded slightly. Oh, she said. The silence between the three of us was thick. Can we come in? I asked. Claire hesitated. Just for a second. Then she stepped aside. Of course. Her apartment looked exactly the same as it always did. Candles on the coffee table, blankets folded over the couch, soft music playing quietly in the background. Normally it felt warm and comforting. Tonight it felt different. Like walking into a place that used to be safe. Claire closed the door behind us. "So," she said slowly, crossing her arms. "What's going on?" I didn't sit down. Neither did Daniel. "Claire," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to ask you something." Her eyes moved between us. "What kind of question requires both of you showing up at my apartment at 10 at night?" I swallowed. "Who's Mark?" For the first time since we arrived. Claire looked genuinely startled. Her eyes widened slightly. "What? Mark?" I repeated. "The person you were texting last night." The color in her face changed. Just a little. But I saw it. And suddenly the room felt colder. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said carefully. "Yes, you do," I replied. She looked at Daniel now. "Why is he here?" "Because this involves him too." Claire's jaw tightened. "I think you're both being ridiculous." Am I?" I asked quietly. Then I repeated the words that had been echoing in my mind all day. "Did she sign yet?" Claire froze. It was only for a second. But it was enough. Because in that moment, I saw something on her face that I had never seen before. Not confusion. Not concern. Recognition. Daniel noticed it too. "Claire," he said slowly. "Who were you talking to?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the kitchen counter and poured herself a glass of water. Her movements were slower now. More careful. When she turned back toward us, her expression had changed. The softness was gone. And in its place was something colder. "You went through my phone?" she asked me. I ignored the question. "Why were you asking if I signed the divorce papers?" Claire studied my face for a long moment. Then she laughed. It wasn't her usual laugh. It was sharp. Almost amused. "You really want to know?" she said. My chest tightened. "Yes." She set the glass down on the counter. Then she looked directly at Daniel. And said something that made my blood run cold. "Because once Emily signs those papers, everything finally becomes a lot simpler." The words hung in the room like smoke. Everything finally becomes a lot simpler. My stomach twisted. Simpler for who? I asked. Claire tilted her head slightly, studying me like she was deciding how much to say. "For everyone," she replied. "That's not an answer." Daniel stepped forward slightly. "Claire, stop playing games." She looked at him, and something strange passed across her face. Not guilt. Not embarrassment. Something closer to irritation. "I'm not playing games," she said calmly. "Then explain," I said. For a moment she didn't speak. Then she sighed and leaned against the kitchen counter, folding her arms. "You really want honesty tonight?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Her eyes met mine. "You and Daniel have been miserable for years." That's not." "Don't interrupt me," she said sharply. The tone shocked me. Claire had never spoken to me like that before. "Every time you came over," she continued, "all you did was complain. About how he worked too much. About how you felt invisible. About how you wondered if you made a mistake marrying him." I felt Daniel shift beside me. "That doesn't mean I wanted a divorce," I said quietly. Claire shrugged. "It sounded like you did." That still doesn't explain the messages," Daniel said. Claire's gaze moved to him again. "You're right," she said. "It doesn't." The room went silent. My chest felt tight now, because the way she said it sounded like she had already decided something. "Claire," I said slowly, "who is Mark?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead she walked back into the living room and sat down on the edge of the couch. Then she looked up at us. "Mark is someone who understands opportunities," she said. My confusion deepened. "Opportunities?" "Yes." "What does that have to do with my marriage?" Claire leaned back slightly. "Because your divorce would create one." Daniel frowned. "I'm going to need you to be a lot clearer than that." Claire exhaled, almost like she was tired of explaining something obvious. "Mark works with Daniel's company." Daniel stiffened. "What?" "He's in acquisitions." Daniel's eyes narrowed. Acquisitions for what? Claire smiled faintly. For the company you helped build. The room went completely still. You're lying, Daniel said. But his voice wasn't as confident as he probably wanted it to be. Claire shrugged. Am I? I felt like the floor had shifted beneath me. What are you talking about? I asked. Claire looked back at me. Daniel's company has been trying to buy out smaller competitors for months now, she said. Mark's firm has been trying to do the same thing. Daniel stared at her. You've been talking to someone in corporate acquisition about my personal life? Of course, she said simply. Why? Her answer came without hesitation. Because if you and Emily divorce, things get messy. Daniel's jaw tightened. What does that mean? Claire's eyes flicked toward me again. Assets, she said. The word hit me like a brick. What? If the divorce becomes complicated, you'll be distracted, she continued calmly. Lawyers, financial negotiations, emotional stress. Daniel's face was dark now. You've been feeding information about our marriage to someone at a rival firm? Claire didn't deny it. In fact, she almost looked proud. You said it yourself earlier tonight, she replied. You've been falling apart for months. My heart was racing. Why would you do that? I whispered. Claire looked at me like the answer was obvious. Because Mark promised me something. The room felt suddenly smaller. What? Daniel asked. She smiled again. A position. Silence. Once the acquisition happens, she said, he'll bring me into the company. My hands were shaking now. You sabotaged my marriage for a job? Claire rolled her eyes. Oh please, Emily. Your marriage didn't need my help. Daniel stepped forward. You encouraged her to see a divorce lawyer. Claire shrugged. She was already unhappy. You texted me about our relationship. You were already distant. You pushed us apart. Claire laughed softly. No, she said. I just gave a little nudge to something that was already falling. Her words felt like knives. Because part of me hated how easily she said them. But another part of me hated something even more. The possibility that she believed them. That she thought our marriage was weak enough to break with just a few whispers. I felt Daniel's hand gently take mine. And that small gesture said more than anything else in the room. Because for the first time in months, we were standing on the same side. I looked at Claire, my best friend, the woman who had stood next to me at my wedding. You didn't just betray me, I said quietly. You used me. Claire's expression didn't soften. Instead, she said something that made the entire situation even worse. You're acting like this isn't still going to happen. My heart sank. What do you mean? She leaned forward slightly. The divorce papers are already in motion, she said. Then her eyes flicked toward Daniel. And by the time you two figure everything out, her smile widened. It might already be too late to stop what comes next. Her words hit me like ice. It might already be too late. I felt my chest tighten. Every muscle in my body went rigid. The room felt smaller, claustrophobic. Daniel's grip on my hand was firm, grounding me, but even his presence couldn't stop the flood of fear and betrayal coursing through me. You did all of this? I whispered, my voice trembling. All those years, all those conversations. You were planning this? Claire tilted her head slightly, as if my question amused her. I didn't plan your life, Emily. I just guided it. You were already unhappy. I just accelerated things. My hands shook. You manipulated me. My marriage. You my life. For what? A job? Some position. She shrugged almost casually, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Opportunities don't wait. Life doesn't wait. And sometimes friends make tough choices to help themselves. I felt a wave of nausea. How had I never seen this coming? How could I have trusted her so completely? My best friend, my confidant, my sister in everything but blood, had been the architect of my worst nightmare. Daniel's voice broke the silence, low and dangerous. You underestimated us. You thought we wouldn't notice. You thought she was just unhappy, but you didn't consider what would happen if we started paying attention. Claire's eyes flicked between us. A faint smile tugged at her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. You think noticing changes anything? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Every instinct told me I needed to act, to confront, to reclaim control. And for the first time in weeks, I felt clarity cutting through the storm of anger and hurt. "You've underestimated one thing, Claire," I said slowly, deliberately. "You don't control me. You never did. And if you think this is about a position or some corporate game, you're about to find out how real consequences feel." Her smile faltered. That small flicker of uncertainty, tiny, almost imperceptible, was the first crack in the armor she had worn for so long. Daniel nodded, squeezing my hand gently. "We're going to fix this. Together." I felt a surge of determination. All the betrayal, all the manipulation, all the whispers in my ear over the past months, they had not defeated me. Not yet. Claire stood slowly, straightening her posture, but the confidence she had carried for so long was beginning to crumble. "You really think you can stop what's already in motion?" she asked. I looked her directly in the eyes, the same eyes I had trusted for over a decade. "Yes, because the truth is on our side. And truth always finds a way." For a long moment, the three of us just stared at each other. The apartment, once warm and inviting, now felt like a stage for the reckoning I had waited for all these weeks. Every word, every gesture, every breath carried weight. I could feel the shift happening. The power had moved, and it was no longer hers. Claire finally spoke, her voice quieter now. "You think you've won?" I shook my head slowly, calm but unyielding. "I'm not playing a game anymore. This isn't about winning. It's about what's right. And we're not finished yet." Daniel gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, and I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit. The fear, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it had made me stronger. Stronger than I had been when I walked in here. Stronger than the friend I had once thought would protect me at all costs. Claire's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something I didn't expect: hesitation. It was small, but enough. I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. The confrontation, the reveal, the chance to reclaim my life. And I was ready. Claire's hesitation gave me the moment I needed. "I think it's time you tell us everything," I said, my voice calm but firm. "No more games, no more whispers behind closed doors. Who is Mark and what exactly have you been doing?" She looked at me, then at Daniel, then back at me again. Her face was a mask of composure, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the slight tremor in her fingers as she adjusted the glass she had been holding. "You're really going to push me?" she asked, almost mockingly. "After everything?" "Yes," I said. "Because I deserve the truth. And so does Daniel." Claire sighed, leaning back against the couch. "Fine. You want honesty? Here it is. Mark is an associate at the firm. He's been facilitating opportunities. He noticed your unhappiness, Emily. He told me that once your marriage ended cleanly, there would be an opening for me. A promotion, a seat at the table I've been working toward for years. That's all." Daniel's jaw tightened. "So you used my wife, our marriage, as leverage for a job?" Claire shrugged. "Leverage is a strong word. Let's call it guidance. You two were already on the rocks. I didn't make this happen. I just nudged it along. You were ready, even if you didn't know it." My chest felt heavy, the betrayal cutting deeper with every word. 10 years of friendship gone. 10 years of trust gone. All the late-night conversations, the secrets shared, the advice given, all manipulated. "I trusted you," I whispered. "I confided in you. I relied on you. And you orchestrated my pain for a promotion." Claire's expression softened, almost pityingly. "Emily, you've been strong for so long. I was just helping you see what you needed to see." "Helping me see?" My lips trembled. "Helping me see what?" "That my best friend could betray me this completely." Daniel spoke, his voice low and steady. "Claire, this isn't just about opportunity. You interfered with real lives. You jeopardized our trust, our marriage, our future. That's not guidance. That's betrayal." Claire didn't respond immediately. Her silence was sharp, almost suffocating. I realized then that she had underestimated us. Not our emotions, but our resolve. I took a deep breath, feeling the knot of anger and hurt slowly transform into clarity. I'm done letting you manipulate my life, I said. Done letting you dictate what's right for me, for Daniel, for us. The friendship we had, it's over. Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't name. Regret? Fear? Or maybe the first hint that her careful control was slipping. You think this ends here? She asked quietly. Yes, I said. For you and me it does. But it won't undo what you've done. That's on you. Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. Let's go, he said. As we walked toward the door, Claire's gaze followed us, and I could feel the weight of her realization settling in. For the first time, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Relief because the truth was finally out, and exhaustion because the road ahead, legal battles, emotional recovery, rebuilding trust, was still long. But this time, I knew we would face it together. Outside, the night air was cool against my skin. I inhaled deeply, feeling the tension slowly release from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Daniel looked at me and smiled softly. We're going to be okay, he said. I nodded. Yes, we are. And this? I gestured toward Claire's apartment one last time. This is over. We walked to the car, hand in hand, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt safe. Not because the danger was gone, but because I had reclaimed control over my life. The betrayal had been devastating. The manipulation shocking. But the truth had finally set me free. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but it would be ours to navigate together, not hers. And that knowledge, solid, unwavering, was more powerful than any fear, any deception, any betrayal. Because for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally move forward. The next few days felt surreal. It was as if the world had tilted slightly on its axis, and I was finally catching my balance. Daniel and I spent hours talking, planning, and just being. Not as husband and wife in crisis, but as partners navigating a storm we had survived together. I filed a formal complaint with HR about Claire. Not out of revenge, but to ensure she couldn't harm anyone else the way she had tried to harm us. Mark's involvement was clear, and his firm had to know what their associate had been doing. Using private marital struggles for corporate gain. When the first official meetings were scheduled, Claire tried to maintain her calm composure, but her usual confidence was cracking. Emails went unanswered, calls were delayed, excuses piled up. She realized she had underestimated the consequences of her actions. At home, I began to reclaim my space emotionally. Every corner of the house I had once associated with fear, doubt, and betrayal slowly became mine again. The smell of Daniel's coffee brewing in the mornings no longer made me tense. The sound of our old records spinning on the turntable became soothing again. We even started cooking together again, something we hadn't done in months. The kitchen was filled with laughter, with small, normal moments that felt miraculous after the storm we'd endured. I thought a lot about Claire. Not out of longing or nostalgia, but to understand how someone I had loved as a sister could betray me so completely. I realized the mistake wasn't mine. The mistake was trusting someone so deeply without considering that people have their own ambitions, their own selfish motives. I forgave her, not for her, but for me. Forgiving her didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean reinstating the friendship. It meant releasing the anger that had threatened to consume me. Daniel and I also sought counseling together. It wasn't because our marriage was broken. It was because it had been tested in ways neither of us could have predicted. Talking through our emotions, the manipulation we had endured, and the fear we had felt helped us rebuild trust that had been shaken but never fully broken. For the first time in months, I could look at Daniel and see the man I had fallen in love with, not the man Claire had made me doubt. And slowly, I started to rebuild myself too. I spent more time with old friends who had always supported me. I started journaling again, pouring out emotions that had been trapped inside me for too long. I started setting boundaries, learning to recognize manipulative behavior before it could take root. The betrayal had been painful, yes, but it had also taught me something invaluable. My life and my happiness were mine to protect. No one else had the right to dictate them, not even my best friend. Months passed, and life began to feel normal again. The sense of constant tension that had weighed on me for weeks lifted, replaced by a quiet, confident awareness. Daniel and I were stronger, more connected. Our communication had improved. We laughed more freely, loved more openly, and valued our partnership in ways we hadn't before the betrayal. Even Claire's absence became a relief. No more whispers, no more subtle nudges toward destruction. Just silence. And in that silence, peace. One evening, Daniel and I sat on our porch with mugs of tea, the sun sinking low in the sky, painting everything in gold. "I can't believe how far we've come," he said softly. I smiled, leaning against him. "I know. I never thought I'd feel safe again, or that I'd be able to trust completely." He kissed my forehead gently. "We survived. And we'll keep surviving together." I nodded. I had survived betrayal. I had survived manipulation. And more than that, I had survived losing the version of myself that Claire had tried to break. Now I was whole again, stronger than I had ever been. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I truly believed in second chances, not just for our marriage but for life itself. Sitting here now, months after that night, I often think back to everything that happened. The betrayal, the manipulation, the heartbreak, the fear. It's hard to put into words the mixture of emotions I felt: anger, disbelief, sadness, but also a strange clarity. That clarity came from realizing that no one, not even someone you've called your best friend for years, has the right to control your life, your marriage, or your happiness. I had to reclaim myself, piece by piece, moment by moment. And it wasn't easy. Some nights, the memories would creep in. The messages, the whispers, the careful nudges that had led me to doubt everything. I had to remind myself, the problem wasn't me. It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't our love. It was the choices of someone else, and now, those choices had consequences. Through all of this, I learned a few things I want to share with anyone listening. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Your intuition is often your first line of protection. Boundaries are vital. No matter how close someone is, no one should have unchecked access to your decisions or your emotions. Healing is an active choice. Betrayal cuts deep, but moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means reclaiming your peace. Communication strengthens bonds. Daniel and I survived because we chose honesty, openness, and teamwork, even when it was hard. I also want to say this about friendship. Some friendships last a lifetime, and some show their true nature in difficult times. Both can teach you lessons, sometimes painful, sometimes liberating. I don't hate Claire. I don't wish her harm. But I have accepted that her path is not mine. My path is to nurture the people who lift me up, who support me, and to protect the love I share with Daniel. So to anyone watching who has been betrayed by someone you trusted, it hurts. It will hurt. But don't let that pain define you. Let it teach you. Let it guide you toward better boundaries, deeper connections, and stronger self-respect. Because the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself, and with the people who truly stand by you. Would you have done what I did? Would you have confronted your best friend, or walked away silently? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've experienced betrayal, or know someone who has, take a moment to reflect and share your story in the comments. And if you want more stories like mine, real, emotional, and revealing, make sure to subscribe and join our community. Because sometimes the hardest journeys teach us the most valuable lessons. And sometimes, surviving betrayal is just the beginning of finding your strength.